Hi everyone, so the Premier League fixtures are out Thursday, which will be today by the time this video goes out. But before all the fixtures, we're going to have a look at statistically who was the best Newcastle 11 last season according to WhoScored.com. This video is sponsored by OneFootball, who themselves have some fantastic statistics. Download that is free. Link is in the description for that, keeping you up to date with all the tournaments which are happening this summer. So without further ado, let's get on the computer. Right then, let's crack on with it, and it's an easy one because Martin Dubravka, we're not going to compare him to anyone because he didn't have any competition except from Freddie Woodman and Carl Darlow in the Cups. So we don't need to look at Martin Dubravka's stats because he was ever present, played 38 games. So let's crack on and move over to a right wing back system. We're going to be playing the Rafa system as well. So we're going to compare DeAndre Yedlin with Javier Manquillo, who both have the critics. This is the defensive stats at the moment, and you'll probably see it's pretty even if you look at the two stats with the amount of greens on either side. I mean, it's down to preference. Some people prefer Yedlin, some people prefer Manquillo, but you can see the clearances. Manquillo's made 2.7 there, so that's pretty decent. Let's take a look at defensively, and again, you probably say that it's quite similar as well. If you take out the appearances and go appearances by Yedlin, you have to say it's even again. Look at assists. Manquillo's got 3 there. You're looking at the shots per game. Yedlin wins it. Key passes. Yedlin does get 1 key pass per game, whereas Manquillo only gets 1 every 2. But again, if you look at those stats, again, it's quite similar. If you look at also the bad control per game, 1.2 is both similar as well. So very similar stats going forward and backwards. But let's take a look at the passing stats. Who is best? Because this is going to determine who plays right wing back for us. And I think this is going to shade it. DeAndre Yedlin is going to nick this. If you look at these stats again, key passes, which we'll touch upon, there's 1. Yes, Manquillo gets more assists. But also, if you look at pass successful rate, very similar, but Yedlin probably shades it. You look at the average passes per game, Yedlin again. Crosses, Yedlin again. Long balls, Yedlin probably just shades it. So our first right wing back is DeAndre Yedlin. Let's take a look at left wing back, and we're not going to put Antonio Baraka in there, are we? He's only played 8 minutes. So defensively, we're going to look at Paul Dummett and Matt Ritchie, and defensively, you can see that Paul Dummett wins the majority of stuff here. If you have a look at, look at his clearances, 4.7. Yes, I know some of these are played at centre back. I understand that, but Matt Ritchie's only other competition really that he's had this season is Paul Dummett, who played a few times there. Paul Dummett, of course, was moved to centre-back later on in the season. But if you look at offensively, Matt Ritchie wins pretty much hands down. He almost wins everything, except from one other thing that Paul Dummett will win on. He's got loads of assists. He's got, plenty of key passes per game. Ritchie retracts the most fouls. He has the most dribbles. So, yeah, Matt Ritchie wins quite clearly on that one in terms of going forward. Let's take a look at passing, and again, Matt Ritchie. So I think Matt Ritchie is going to be our left wing back, it looks like. The only other thing that Paul Dummett wins on is long balls, but as I say already, we're comparing Matt Ritchie to Paul Dummett, probably a little bit unfairly because Paul Dummett has moved to centre-back. So what we'll be doing in a moment is we'll be comparing Paul Dummett with other centre-backs at the club and see who gets in the 3-man defence. So listed, we've got Fabian Schär, Florian Lejeune, Jamal Lascelles and Federico Fernandez. Again, this is the defensive stats, and it is Jamal Lascelles who's predominantly bossing it. Have a look at the clearances Jamal Lascelles has per game compared to the other, 6.6, which is massive. But look at how many dribbled past per game that Lascelles get. It's 0.1, which is absolutely phenomenal. Not many people beat him one-on-one dribbles. People go on about Van Dijk, but Jamal Lascelles is absolutely bossing it there. So quite clearly, except from tackles and interception, I can't even speak, Jamal Lascelles wins this. Round 1 to him. Now going forward in our style, we know that Lejeune and Fabian Schär come out, so these two should be winning it, but it is actually Fabian Schär who's winning this going forward. As you can see, he's got 4 goals, 1 assist. Interestingly, he has 1 shot per game on average, which is pretty impressive considering he's a centre-back. And when you compare that, Hoslo later on this video, Hoslo only has 1.1 on average, whereas Fabian Schär, a defender, has 1. So going forward, you can tell that Fabian Schär is winning the majority of these stuff because he's bringing the ball out of defence. No real surprises there for me. Lascelles struggles in this for a lot of the categories because he's a no-nonsense defender. He'll just kick it out. So it looks like Fabian Schär wins this one. And then we're going to look at the final one, which again is passing. This is going to determine who is our first pick in the centre-backs. And you probably say for this that Florian Lejeune is going to nick this one. So key passes he wins on, well, alongside Fabian Schär. Average passes per game, he's higher up but then his nearest man. You can tell by Schär and Lejeune are the ball playing centre backs with the highest passes. Yes, Federico Fernandez wins on the amount of pass successful rate, but apart from that, Fernandez is struggling, even though he had a great first half of the season compared to the other 3 guys in this table. Where long ball, look at again Fabian Schär and Florian Lejeune, but defenders are there to defend, so we're going to go for Jamal Lascelles defensively. I'm going to mix it up, and we're going to bring in Kieran Clark as the next man to be compared against the other 3. And look at the defensive stats now. Again, it's heavily influenced by Fabian Schär. He is now the standout defender by taking Jamal Lascelles out because Lascelles has been picked. Lejeune struggles. He's not even number 1 for anything on this list. Offensively, again, Fabian Schär is winning the majority of things as well. You look at shots per game, which I've talked about as well. Dribbles, the amount of fouls. Fabian Schär picks up almost a foul per game, which is pretty impressive for a centre-back. So that's probably shaded there. And then passing, again, you'd probably say that it's majority Florian Lejeune. Federico Fernandez features in 2 or 3. But overall, from the 4 centre-backs that are remaining here, you have to say that it's going to be Fabian Schär that nicks this, and he is going to be our second choice centre-back alongside our captain Jamal Lascelles. And then we're going to bring in Paul Dummett to compare the rest. Who's going to get that final spot? Defensively, it's pretty even with 3 of them, Dummett, Lejeune and Kieran Clark. Very similar stats. Only thing is that Florian Lejeune quite easily wins on tackles. However, Kieran Clark isn't too far behind on 1.8 as well. Clark wins on blocks and dribble past per game ratio. Going forward, this will be interesting, this one. You probably again say that's Kieran Clark's picked up a few, not massive numbers, don't get me wrong. Florian Lejeune's got a couple there as well, so probably again between Lejeune and Kieran Clark, who's the better defender going forward. Both comfortable on the ball, much better than the other 2 in this list. So it's all down to passing. Who's going to win that to get the final third in this wing-back system that Rafa Benitez likes to play? The final section is passing. And we already know that Florian Lejeune is very strong in this category, and he's going to nick it. He's going to win the 3rd place alongside Fabian Schär and Jamal Lascelles is in the amount of stats, so he's got more greens than everybody else. Yeah, the only other thing that Fernandez has beaten is obviously the pass completion rate, but look at those long balls, a whopping 6.8 when Jonjo Shelvey doesn't play. Florian Lejeune is absolutely fantastic, and those 3 centre-backs, Paul Dummett has had a great season, but those are the 3. We're going to move on to midfield, and we're going to compare Isaac Hayden, Mo Diarmi and Sung-Yueng and Jonjo Shelvey. Defensively, the one thing that points out for me is how poor is Jonjo Shelvey. We can say that I'm highlighting Isaac Hayden, but look at Shelvey. Interceptions 0.4, which isn't great. Keys won a couple there, but Isaac Hayden is winning the majority of that. Mo Diarmi struggles in the midfield, and he's had a poor season, and he has been kept on for a reason. I know he's won a couple here, but you'll see what I mean in a moment. But just, you would say Isaac Hayden is nicking the defensive side, which you would expect Jonjo Shelvey to be better going forward. Let's have a look at going forward. No surprise that Jonjo Shelvey wins this. If you look at the shots per game, you look at the key passes per game, He's much higher than the rest. He wins quite easily on that. And then also, if you look at it, the interesting one, bad control per game, Shelvey only has 0.5 at the bottom right of your screen, which is, it doesn't surprise him massively because he's technically gifted. But Mo Diarmi scores really poor for dispossession per game and also bad control per game as well. Diarmi is pretty high, but going forward, Jonjo Shelvey's going to win this one. We're going to go down passing again. Jonjo Shelvey wins the majority of that. An interesting one which I picked up on this when I was looking at this is have a look at how good a key is passing. Over 85% that is accurate. That's pretty special for a player who, you know, is not really considered a highlight, a key player, pardon the pun. But Jonjo Shelvey is winning these long balls. He has a slightly marginal through balls, crosses almost one per game, so he's beaten all of that, and it's going to be Jonjo Shelvey, our first defensive centre midfielder. So what we're going to do now is bring Shelvey out and bring in Sean Longstaff, and we already know that Isaac Hayden is strong defensively. The only other thing that Sean Longstaff is winning in this category is the amount of blocks that he puts in. He has the most, just marginally ahead of Mo Diarmi, but defensively Isaac Hayden is winning that one. Going forward, this is a mixture between Key and Sean Longstaff. Sean Longstaff is probably just going to scrape it, but it is marginally. I know Isaac Hayden has 4 assists, however, it's between Key and Longstaff going forward. And then again, Mo Diarmi struggling in these categories, but it's going to be down to passing who gets that role alongside Jonjo Shelvey on WhoScored.com. Let's take a look, and you've got to have to say it's going to be Key Sung-Yueng who's going to partner Jonjo Shelvey in our team. It's marginal that Key has it. Interesting that Sean Longstaff has on average 3.3 long balls per game. Interesting that. Whereas Key's next, which is 2.9. Considering Longstaff doesn't take any corners or anything. Average passes, Key's higher than everyone else, marginally than Longstaff, but it's going to be Key Sung-Yueng who's our midfielder. And then we're going to look at the two that'll play behind the striker next, which we're going to compare Jacob Murphy. Yes, I know he was sent out on loan the second half of the season. Christian Atsu, Kennedy, which those three are probably the weakest three. And then we're going to put Ioza Prez, which I'm expecting Prez to dominate. However, defensively, Kennedy's got a couple of surprises there. You look at the interceptions that Kennedy's got here, which is 1.3, and clearances he wins on, which is almost 1 per game. Perez actually struggles defensively, so I know he works hard off the ball, but on the ball, it's down to Kennedy and Jacob Murphy. However, going forward, Perez dominates, except from a couple of categories. Look at that. You can talk about shots per goal, which is 1.5. Key passes 1.2. The amount of fouls that he gets brought from defenders on him. So dribbles as well. So he wins quite a big chunk of that. No surprises that Atsu for me and Kennedy struggle going forward, because for me they don't bring enough. The one thing that is bad touch per game is Kennedy's passing going forward. And then the passing, it's Perez. Perez is going to get that slot. I'm going to put him on the right tack and midfield. He's winning the most of this, averages most passes. The only other thing that Atsu wins on is that he's got the best short passes, because, well, I know it doesn't say short passes, but Atsu passes, a majority of his are short. Atsu very rarely goes long, but long balls, Prez wins. Through balls, marginally, but Ioza Prez is going to be that right attacker midfielder behind the striker. We're going to bring in Miggy Almiron now, and who's going to get that left flank role behind the striker. So defensively, again, it's probably just shades Jacob Murphy. Kennedy, as we know, already has a couple. Interesting though, Miguel Almiron wins on average 2 tackles per game. We've seen this a lot in the MLS, and I think it'll be a big season for him next year, nicking the ball back and running on the counter. That is something that we may want to have a look at next season. Going forward, again, it's probably a mixture of Murphy, maybe Kennedy, but Almiron wins a few here. You look at those shots per game, Almiron's almost got 2. Then you look at the dribbles per game. Again, he scores high. He picked up the most fouls, a whopping 1.7 compared to the rest. But we already know about Murphy, obviously, with the bad control per game, which is 1.1. He has the least. Interesting that Miguel Almiron has the most, but he runs a pace, like lightning pace. But just, you would say, between Almiron, Kennedy. This is where Almiron nicks it, which is the passing side of things. Again, key passes 1.3. He averages the most passes quite easily by the most. Gets the most crosses, long balls he wins on, and marginally through balls. But Miguel Almiron is going to nick that left flank role ahead of the rest of them. And then it's going to be down to the three strikers. You would think that Solomon Rondon would win this quite easily. But let's take a look at the defensive side of things. Hoslu gets in almost a tackle per game, but clearance is 1.2, which is interesting. That's probably because Rondon is coming back for corners a lot, and he does get his head on and he gets to the clear a lot. Mutu wins a couple of the minor things, but Rondon probably shades it defensively. Going forward, you can see all the green there with Solomon Rondon. Yes, it does help with the amount of games and minutes because the goals are higher, but you take that aside, shots per game 2.8, which is high. Key passes 1, but the rest of them, I mean, Hoslu doesn't even get any green on this list, where Mutu picks up a couple. And then you look at something that I do want to highlight is how bad is Solomon Rondon for dispossession per game and also ball control. He's the highest for that, but Hoslu's stats here for key passes and dribbles are really, really low. But Rondon is going to nick that, and that's going to be down to now who has the best passing, who determined who will play up top. There's no surprise that Solomon Rondon statistically is going to be the best striker. I think he's so fitted for our system. The only other thing, Mutu wins, yes, on you talk about pass successful rate, but Hoslu, a couple of minor things, but it's Solomon Rondon for the amount of greens, marginally beating Hoslu by 2. But yeah, you got to get Solomon Rondon signed. Any surprises for you? Sean Longstaff, I thought, might have got on that side. I also thought Paul Dubbett might have as well. I wasn't really too surprised about everybody else. But yeah, some people might say that statistics are nothing, because you can look at John Joe Shelby, the amount of misplaced passes that he does with his long balls. 1 out of 10 of them might come up with a goal, but the other 9 might go to an opposition or out of play or to a attacker's head, which might go out for a throw and whatever. But some people are very, very obsessed with stats. I know Rafa Benitez is very much obsessed with stats, but how good did Jamal Lascelles look on those stats despite him having an indifferent season? So you can't read too much into it, but can you? Let me know what you lot think in the comments down there below. Have a good night.